Alrighty, here we are back again, episode 4.
Episode 4.
Real estate talk.
Real estate talk, and our first episode just dropped this week.
Yeah. First episode was released 2 days ago. Well, I guess when we're filming versus when it's released. But we've had a good response so far.
Yeah, we have more than my immediate family following us, so that's a pro.
Yeah, immediate family are the big supporters, but got a couple of you out there that are supporting us already, and so we've been encouraged by the feedback there, and excited to keep pumping these out for you guys.
Yeah, so today we're in my office. We threw all the papers on the floor, made it look halfway clean, and just hanging out Royal LePage today.
Hanging out Royal LePage. So if you hear some door knocks in the background, Jeff gets about 15 questions a day from other agents in here. So we might have a lineup that just has to pile up while we're recording. And
either that or you'll see Samurai giggling as people make faces through our glass door here and try to distract us.
No way that would happen with all of the real estate professionals we work with.
Very professional.
Very professional. Anyways, today our topic that we're going to be touching on is building a house, and essentially like what goes along with custom building or getting a house built or building a house yourself. And so this is definitely more of Jeff's expertise topic. I have not built my own house before. So we'll probably do a little bit more of an interview style format. Hopefully I can get some questions answered that the general public would wonder, and hopefully Jeff has some good answers for us.
Yeah, we'll try and give you a little bit of insight as to what it takes to build a house. My wife and I, one before I was married, and then once after I was married, I built a house. So I have 2 houses under my belt. And I was a general contractor on these. So I'm probably going to share from that point of view, not so much getting a custom built, but tackling and building your own house.
Awesome. Okay. So let's just kick it off. Where would you start? If say that I want to build my own house, I've got no clue what I'm doing. Where do I start? Where do I go?
Okay. So that is a tough question. If you have no clue, it's going to be a sharp learning curve.
Okay. So I'm going to start with this podcast.
Start with this podcast. Decide you're going to build a house.
There we go. Yep.
All right. So I'll give you a little bit of idea of where I came from. I was fairly young when I built my first house, 20 years old. I had been working for my brother, who was a home builder at that time.
Right.
So I came with at least, a little bit of knowledge, some rudimentary knowledge of what it takes to build a house. So if you want to start today, build a house, the first thing that I would suggest you do is consider how you're going to finance it. I know we're going to touch on that a little bit here, so I'll skip over that. The next thing would be trying to secure a piece of property. That's kind of where I started with the process. Both times I built, I put my name down on a lot. I was able to have it held for me with a bit of a small deposit. And that's kind of where I started from, was the piece of the property. And then from there, we figured out our plans, how we were going to finance this thing. And during that process, we also figured out what trades and sub-trades we needed and pricing out from there.
Gotcha. So like as far as financing, is it similar to getting a mortgage on a house kind of deal? Do you have to have a lot more down? What's the process for that?
Yeah, in all honesty, this is where we lose most people. Okay. We've had lots of people over time come and say, hey, I want to build a house, or I want to set up an acreage, or I want to do something like that. I see that the land is $100,000, and I think I can build a house for $100,000. So $200,000 for maybe a $300,000 house sounds great. Now there's a lot of other costs, a lot of things that people don't think about. And when you go to finance, if you go to a conventional lender, if you go to a mortgage broker, they're going to tell you that there's only a limited number of people who are going to look at lending. Gotcha. Or a limited number of companies. So most of these would be kind of your bricks and mortar, your ATB, TD. I think Service does some construction loans, and quite often what they're going to try and do is set you up on a draw loan system. So what that means is you will get paid as the building progresses.
Mm.
So in order to do that, they want you to secure a piece of property. They want you to figure out exactly how much it's going to be if you hire out 100% of the build process.
Gotcha.
They're going to go and get an appraisal on your plan and your piece of property and try and figure out what the value is going to be at the end to make sure that as an investor, they're going to actually have an asset that outweighs the cost.
Gotcha. And so then securing that piece of property, though, would that be solely on you, or is there lenders that would look at helping you with that as well? Or does that come under all of the other costs as well?
Yeah, that kind of comes under all the other costs. What I find most people who build, what they do is they actually end up buying the piece of land outright. As far as I know, and I could be wrong, I'd have to check with the lender, you're going to need to have at least 20% down. I don't think you can get an insured mortgage on a construction loan. So if you want to have an $800,000 house by the time it's done, if that's what it would cost to hire a custom builder to do it, you're going to have 20% of that
$160K.
up front. Yeah, $160K. So a lot of that can be in your land. But then you're also going to need to have that money to kind of float you in the interim between your draws. So essentially what happens is they want to see you do the work before they give you the money. So they quite often will do, I think, a draw at lockup stage. So that's like after you poured your foundation, after you've framed the house, you get the windows and doors in, it's to lock up. They'll give you some money. And then I think there's one stage, maybe drywall. So after the trades are through, insulated, boarded, and then you get your final draw at the end. So you just need some money to float you in between, or you have to have credit.
Gotcha.
The other way that you can finance this, and in all honesty, it's the way I did it, is I actually got private financing. So what I did is I was able to secure the lot with a deposit, and then I paid interest on the lot until the house was built. So was the lot value. And then for the remainder, I did out of private financing. So I went to someone I knew very well, and Dad lent me some money. The second one, I had a little bit more to put towards it. The first time, a family member lent me the money so I could build the house. And then once it was done, it was much easier for me to get a conventional mortgage. So there are some different risks and rewards with that. I found it was a much easier thing to do, especially when you're a 20-year-old looking at building a house.
Yeah. So essentially, if you got, say, a wealthy uncle or family friend or something that trusts you, willing to back you, you can go get the money from them to build the house, and then you take it to a lender and you say, I want to put a mortgage on this.
Yeah. That's essentially
pay them back. And
sounds pretty easy, but
I'm sure there's some sticky things in there, but
there are some different things, and there are some lenders who will do private financing. If you bring the plan to them and you show them what your plan is, they will lend you the money. A lot of builders, small builders I know, use private money, so they have business people who are looking to get a return on investment. Quite often the interest rate's a little bit higher, but you can get that money kind of as you need it, avoid some of those draws and some of the timeline it takes to figure that out. So you can get money from them and then pay them back. Quite often you have to sign some sort of loan agreement still. Sometimes they want you to own the piece of land outright. So there's some different variables, but there's a couple different ways to go about it. And it's just kind of getting creative.
Yeah. Cool. So I've picked out my lot somewhere close to all 3 disc golf courses in town here. I figured out my financing. One of my uncles from Rocky Mountain House is giving me some cash. And what do I do now? What's my next step to go in the building process?
Yeah, quite often I like to start with the lot because that dictates what kind of house you can put on it.
Okay.
So in my case, I want to maximize the build pocket. I built in Royal Oaks and I built in Whispering Ridge. And so they have lot sizes, and then you can only build up to a maximum width. So what I did is I figured out what that was. I looked at the setbacks from the city, from the county. I also went and talked to my engineer at the time, the one who's going to stake out the lot and show me where the house should be. And they kind of gave me an idea of my maximum build pocket. So from there, we went and looked online. We looked at other houses out there. I Googled a whole bunch of different builders in different areas. So looking at BC, looking in Saskatchewan, looking in Alberta. Obviously, I could build kind of the same house as everybody else. But part of the fun of building your own house is you can do something a little different.
Totally.
With my first house, we want to focus on economy. So we found a house plan that was actually built, a house built in the area. We went to the plan designer, said, hey, we would like to build essentially this house with a few modifications. So they drew up the plan. We maximized the build pocket. And with our plan, again, focusing on economy, we essentially built a box with a box in front of it because it was going to be cheaper for cribbing, for framing, stuff like that.
Gotcha. Just a couple boxes and you're off to the races.
So we do get an engineer involved in it, in the process. Sorry, not an engineer. We get a plan designer involved in the process there.
Gotcha.
And they're going to go through it. So the first plan designer that we hired was out of Central Alberta. They're familiar with the building codes. They're familiar with different things that we need to have as part of the house. The last time we used Eye for Home Design out of Sexsmith. We gave them kind of a napkin sketch, and they kind of went from there. Cool. A little bit of back and forth until we reached, kind of the desirable product.
Gotcha. So that's kind of your architect or the person making up your plan. And then, so at that point...
Plan draftsman, I guess we'd call him.
Okay, plan draftsman. So at that point, you've got your lot, you've got your financing, you've got your plan. Then what is the next step? You going to get trades or?
Yeah, so there's a couple different steps. At that point, what I did before pulling permits, before shoveling the ground, is I went and I found my trades. Gotcha. Yeah, I went and priced everything out because I wanted to make sure that I was going to have enough money to complete this. I had a budget in mind, so I wanted to be able to make sure I was going to meet my budget. Gotcha. So what I did is I took my plans. I went over to Nelson Homes in Grand Prairie. I also went to Home Hardware, and I said, look, this is a house I want to build. Can you give me a cost on building materials? So what they did is they designed the truss system. So the roof trusses, the floor joists, they priced out the cost of all the lumber, the windows, the doors, basically all the material I would need for the framing process, insulating, and they also priced out drywall, vinyl siding, shingles, and stuff like that. So they priced out kind of the whole material package.
Okay.
And then I went from there and found different tradesmen. So having a brother who built before, it was a lot easier. I called a lot of guys that I'd worked with previous on the job sites. So I found a cribber. I found someone who was going to actually dig the hole, someone who was going to haul in my gravel. I found my framers, my plumbers, my electricians, my HVAC guys, so that'd be my furnace and stuff. Yep. I went and talked to my roofer. I went and checked out how much it was going to cost for the blow-in insulation, stuff like that. And then talked to my engineer just about the cost of plotting the house. And so I kind of gathered all those together, put them in a fancy little spreadsheet, and it gave me an idea of how much I was going to spend. So after I figured out how much I was going to spend, then we got to the permit stage.
Gotcha.
So with the permits, we went in to the city or the county office, and we said, hey, this is a house I want to build. I want to build it here. They said, here's a bunch of paperwork to fill out. I filled it all out. You have to provide them copies of your plans, your site plan or your plot plan. So where from your engineer, they have to kind of show where your house is going to be on the lot, and you provide that to the municipality who's going to give you the permit.
Gotcha. And then with that as well, so say you were building in Royal Oaks there, do you have to check with Royal Oaks and make sure that your plan conforms to some of their rules as a subdivision? Is there things like that as well?
Yeah, totally. I built in Whispering Ridge and Royal Oaks, and both of them had restrictive covenants. So when I purchased those lots, or when I spoke for them, I spoke for them from direct from the developer.
Okay.
So I went to them and said, "Hey, I want to build here. I'm going to give you this little bit of money. You're going to hold the lot." And then we figured out all our terms, signed our agreement. They said, "Here's a list of rules. Here's the restrictive covenants for the area." Gotcha. Now, if you're buying a resale lot, you might want to check the title and see if there's any restrictive covenants. So in that list of restrictive covenants, there was minimum house size, minimum garage size. Both of them had to have attached garages. There had to be certain roof colors or certain colors I couldn't do.
No red and black plaid roof for Jeff.
No red and plaid. No, I think it
black.
limited to the pastels is what they said. I did have a black roof though. Okay. I think both houses. I actually both had the same siding color.
Cool.
Yeah, Harvard slate.
Harvard
Great.
slate. Sounds cheap.
It was on the cheap side of the siding, but it was the darkest color I could get in the cost-effective siding colors.
Cost-effective.
Yeah.
If I know Jeff, I know cost-effective.
Well, we were building these houses on budgets. Obviously, there are houses we wanted to live in, but there are also houses we knew we weren't going to stay in forever. So we wanted to build them with resale in mind.
Gotcha.
So we had to plan accordingly. In Whispering Ridge, we had to have a 24 by 24 garage. We did run into a little bit of an issue. We were building a modified by, and we wanted to have the roof level the same from the main floor living up to the kind of bonus area. So we want 8 foot upstairs and 11 feet on the main. But we also had to get an 8 foot high garage door in. So I had to work a lot with my engineers, my plan draftsmen in order to meet that 8 foot. And that was a bit of an annoyance. In reality, if it didn't have that requirement, we probably would have shrunk the door a bit or framed it a little bit lower. Those are things to be aware of before you start getting way too far down the road.
That makes sense. So you've got everything lined up. You got all your trades. And were you the head guy, general contractor kind of thing that was directing traffic for all the tradesmen, or did you have someone letting them know when to come in, or is that all on you?
That was all on me. Okay. So both times I decided to build when things were getting busy.
Gotcha.
And that became a little bit challenging. In honesty, my second house was pretty tough when I got to foundation. Gotcha. The guys that I'd used on my previous house, they were flat out. They couldn't do it. I was having problems getting called back from a lot of companies because these guys were busy cribbing.
Busy with real, tons of houses.
Yeah, like working for the spec builders. So they were pretty busy. So I actually went from site to site and asked people, hey, who are you with? Would you be interested in doing a house? And that is how I found the guys who cribbed my basement. I just drove around Whispering Ridge and tried to find them. Now, with being a general contractor, you are the guy that needs to line everybody up. So a lot of phone calls, a lot of communication, and just trying to make sure everything jives. It was a little bit challenging to get people in there at the right times all the time. So my house, the process was probably slower than most of the spec builders, just because I had more days where it was sitting. Also being the general contractor, you find that there's some things that don't get done by the trades. So sometimes it's back framing, so like putting wood in for where the drywallers need to come in. I did all of my backfilling on my basement on them. So filling the dirt around, stuff like that. I did all the sealing of my foundation, so tarring it, doing those sort of things, putting the weeping tile in. Some of it was because I couldn't get guys, and some of it was it fell in the middle ground, and some of it was I was trying to save money and put in the sweat equity.
Totally. So being someone that's been on a job site and stuff, you have the knowledge and the capability to do that. Say if I was to go build a house, get one done myself, I could just hire out a general, right? And they would take care of all the trades and do all that. But then I would be not making as much or not saving as much money on the project as a whole.
Yeah, like I would definitely consider hiring a general contractor. I would say most general contractors are essentially the builders. So you'd be going back to the builder and working with them. They're going to take a little bit more. So there's a couple different ways that general contractors get paid. So if you're planning to build your dream home, Sam, you can go and talk to a couple of the custom builders and say, hey, this is a house I want to build. They would look at you and say, hey, there's a couple ways we can do this. We can give you a fixed bid. So no matter what happens, no matter if it's good building season, bad building season, wood goes up, wood goes down, this is how much it's going to be. Gotcha. You have the security of knowing what it's going to be, but quite often they build in some contingencies. The alternative, and we see this in a lot of the big custom builds, is they're going to say, hey, how about we do a cost plus? So whatever it costs me as a general contractor, I'm going to charge that back to you plus a percentage. So be it 8%, 10%, 12%. Those are all numbers I've heard before. They're going to charge you that. So they're going to be the guys who are on site every day, lining up the contractors, making sure they're there on time, calling them back if something goes wrong. They're going to be the guy who's either going to have a kind of a gopher guy who's going to do some of the backfill, who's going to pick up all the garbage that's left behind, who's going to shovel out, this or that. So you don't have to be the guy doing it.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So basically at this point, we've got our lot, got our house going in, all the contractors have come through. It's pretty much finished up. So based on your experiences with it, what are the pros and cons of, building yourself versus having someone else do all this for you?
Yeah. So the reality of the pros, you can do it your way. I like building. I like building my own house. I like to have a lot of say in things, which Sam knows pretty well. So the fun part is you get to choose what are the cabinets going to like, what's the floor plan, what flooring. With that, there's some limitations, and where we see some people get caught up and overspend on building a house is they decide this is their house. This is their dream home, and they lose sight of the budget.
Need all the extras.
Yeah, I need all the extras. So one of the fun parts for me is, I'm half Mennonite, half Ukrainian, so I love a good deal. Part of the fun was I was able to find good deals. Unlike a spec builder or a custom builder who's going to go out of their way to find sales. Like I bought my flooring on auction. I looked at like the clearance section whenever I was in Home Depot. Just tried to find good quality products, but maybe things that were either going out of stock or companies that were going out of business in some cases. I bought a bunch of lighting there. So it's just trying to find great deals, which provide us with a really nice house at a fraction, for less than what we would pay buying it from a spec builder.
That makes sense.
It was also fun just to see how a house goes together, to have interaction with the trades, to know the house I'm getting is a good house, to know how the heating system runs, to get some of those things that I want in my house. I know I wanted to have my garage heater. I know that I want to have a walkout basement. We were able to pre-plan some things, make sure that it was set. So when we moved in, we either had everything in there or had it set up for to make life easier when we decide to put in the garage heater if we didn't have the cash.
No, that makes sense. I think that's most of the pros of why people would do it themselves, right? Is like after people go and look at 8 or 10 used homes with me, often it's, well, I like this aspect of this home and this aspect of this home and this, but it's very hard to find all of your dream things at once. So
yeah, and the hard part is you're never going to have all your dream things. I built a couple. After that, we renovated a farmhouse. And now we bought a place, and each one there's something that I wish I had. And quite often, well, for us at the beginning, the biggest restriction was the budget. We needed to stay on budget. There was lots of things that I quoted that we had to walk away from because we just didn't have the finances to do. I wanted to have massive windows. Every house I wanted to have a wood burning fireplace, but the amount it cost for wood burning fireplace was like 3-4 times as much as gas. So I'm like, gas fireplace it is for me.
Yeah, the minute an Ukrainian takes over.
Yeah, well, and it's also the reality of building houses in your early 20s where you don't have
Yeah.
a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
We wanted something nice and functional. We wanted to have the hot tub plugs and stuff like that, but recognize that we didn't have the finances.
Yeah.
It gets pretty easy to spend an extra $100 or an extra $500 when you're talking to every trade, and every trade's going to try and sell you on something
Upsell you
extra.
something, yeah.
So for me, it was kind of nice being in the industry, walking through other houses, being like, I really don't need 14 pot lights in here.
Yeah.
Like 4 or 5 would suffice.
100%.
So it's also knowing a little bit of the market, asking other people who know, and having people around you trust. A lot of the tradesmen, because I'd worked with them or they'd worked with people I knew, I had that basis of trust. And I'd ask them straight out, like, if this was your house, would you do it?
Yeah.
And someone would be like, yeah, some no. And some, I'd have to go and ask other people to get honest opinion.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And I think also there's also that aspect of resale where you building a house, you already knew what sold and what was, what were the things that were going to increase your resale price and things like that, right? Whereas, we see a lot of people custom build and then they go to resell and they never get all their money back because they've put big dollars into things that just, might be very unique to those individuals that they want, but the dollar signs doesn't make sense for someone else to buy for that, to pay for that feature.
Yeah, there was definitely things that I saw done in other places that I wanted to do in ours. Stuff that I knew sold very well. There was a few things that part of the fun of building your own is you can try different things.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a few things we tried. We kind of tried the beams before they were really popular. We made kind of a faux beam in our whispering house. So we put up some wood beams. They looked like 8x8s. They're really popular. Actually, when we sold, we got into multiple offers. And one of the couples that lost, actually, their realtor contacted me and said, hey, who built those beams and would they be willing to do it in another house? And I said, I did, and no way. The amount of love, they were relatively inexpensive as far as material, but the amount of hours I put into them and the amount of love and frustration were just off the charts. So it's some of those things it's fun to try for yourself, and you can experiment to some extent. Yeah. We did a poured concrete fireplace hearth, which was kind of fun. It was an idea that we got when we were traveling in the States. Cool. And saw some of the work. So you can really try some of those things. Yeah. On the flip side, it's not all glamorous.
Not all rainbows.
Yeah. My my first house, I was dating. I'd been dating for some time. Mm-hmm. It cost me a lot of money. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, was getting very frustrated in the delay in getting a certain piece of jewelry for her. So the reality is it does take a lot of time.
Your private financer wouldn't give you a little bit more.
I could not handle the idea of borrowing money for my wife's wedding ring or for her engagement ring. So it delayed our engagement probably 6 months because I was trying to finish this and get it refinanced. And I was living, on ramen and noodles at the time, trying to save every dollar I could get to put into the house, finish the house. It was important to finish the house. We were actually finishing the basement. I put a basement suite in my first one, so it'd be an income generator. So it kind of was one of those things I had to spend money to make money. Yeah. So I was able to get that finished, and then a couple months after, popped the big question. To which she said yes.
Say, house. Will you come rent my basement?
No. She moved upstairs.
There we go.
Yeah. So it is a hurdle, or it does provide some financial constraints, especially if you are doing a draw mortgage. Just recognizing, it's going to take a lot of cash. The other hurdle was time management. I kind of tell people I gave up 2 years of my life, one for each house. Outside of working, outside of showing houses, outside of doing my development job at the time, I was at my house. So both houses took me about a year, and I put a ton of hours in. And I would come home from work. I would sometimes eat, sometimes I'd get food brought to me or pick up food on the way. And I would work till midnight, 2:00 for sometimes to try and get the job done. I try to be quiet. On occasion, I got yelled at about 10 o'clock and knew it's time to shut it down.
The old jackhammer at 10 o'clock.
Yeah, we tried to keep it quiet around 9 or 10. But yeah, I give a lot of my free time. So the year we built in Whispering Ridge, my wife went camping. I took the holiday trailer out. I went back and I worked on the house. That was extensive camping. There was a lot of things that I couldn't be involved in. There's a lot of things that we have done with our church and community that got pushed to the side as we were building. And it is one of those things because of the weather timeline, because of trades timeline. My daughter was born in November wrong one. Gotta get the right kid. My daughter was born in October, and it was an early snowfall year, and it looked like snow was coming soon. So the day after she was born, I went and tied rebar all day, much to my wife's delight. It's still a sore spot.
Yikes.
So it is just recognizing in order, if you want to save money, if you want to general yourself, either you're going to have to take time off work or you're going to have to sacrifice personal time. And, in some ways it was well worth it for the financial side. It's not something that I think I could do every year or do it ongoing without either my work suffering or my personal relationships suffering. So some of the drawbacks are that. Some of it is, the frustration with trades, people not showing up when they say they will, getting my framer out of bed. The one who had a real hard time showing up before noon, keeping them going, stuff like that. Fighting with mud. I fought with mud a lot. And then there are just different challenges that came along the way, and everybody would look at you and you're the general contractor. I talked with my brother a lot, who is a home builder, my dad, who's a ticketed carpenter. I called him a few times, talked to some of the neighbors who were building, some of the builders, to try and find solutions. But you do, you're wearing the hat of a general contractor. So either you're going to learn a lot and you're going to learn to problem solve, or it's going to be very difficult build.
Gotcha.
One of the other things that's a bit of a hurdle now, which I didn't touch on, and I actually didn't need to do, but now if you are not planning to live in your house for 10 years, if you think you want to sell it within 10 years, you actually need to get Alberta New Home Warranty. So that happens at the permitting stage. So that can be a bit of a delay there too. There's also a cost associated with obtaining new home warranty. So that's something, if you are considering very early on, I'd say even before securing a lot, you should talk to a new home warranty provider and find out what's going to cost for you to do an owner build.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I think got most of the topics covered on there. I feel like I have a better knowledge now of what it's going to take when my father-in-law builds our house one day. I think like the last kind of question that myself or others might have is overall like pricing. What, like if someone was doing it the way that you did it, building a house themselves, pricing, I guess it's going to be broad because it depends on the size of house you're building and things like that. But, like say we took a house in town that is selling by a builder. Or is it fair to kind of compare it that way, like a new build versus building yourself?
Yeah, like it's a little tough because the first house I built was 2007. The next one was I think 2012. Okay. 2012, 2013. So it it's over 10 years ago that I built these houses. So at that time, I was able to save a substantial amount. My first house we built. The main part of the house for $190,000. Okay. Finished the basement out. The basement suite, we were probably another. I think we were 35 into that, so $225. Okay. And the market softened when we sold our house, right before we built again. And but we sold that thing for $316,000. Okay. It was appraised at $360 when we finished, kind of at the peak. Rate when things were going crazy, 2007, 2008. And then I think it was 2012 when we sold. And it was a little bit softer. So we made a fair bit of money. Our house in Whispering, kind of the same deal. We probably made about $100,000 on that one as well. Most of that I think is not attributed to is probably the man hours I put in.
Yeah.
So it's I guess a mix of the deals I got.
It's that salary you're paying yourself.
It's that salary I was paying myself. So it's kind of that whole second job idea.
Yeah.
If I was to hire out 100% of it, I think it would have cost me more than I could go and buy the house next door for.
Yeah.
So someone who thinks they're going to make $100,000 just by making the phone calls, I think you're going to be sadly disappointed. But there is money to be saved if you go and if you put the hours in, put a lot of man hours in, and then kind of do the cheap labor, so backfilling, prepping for concrete, tying rebar. We did all the insulation. We did the back framing, stuff like that. We were able to save a lot.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there was we made sure all the important things, we hired people who knew what they were doing. Yeah. So framing, roofing, siding,
anything that can collapse on you, burst on you,
anything that can no, we did not touch the electrical. We had real electricians in all that. We did our cabinet install and stuff like that, and we saved money. We actually did IKEA cabinets in both of ours, and we had some positive comments on that. Did all the tile work ourselves, laid the floors. Did kind of the stuff that can be done by grunt workers.
Totally.
First house I painted. Second house I learned enough to know that I shouldn't.
You don't want to do
Great painters after that.
Yeah. Okay. So overall, I'd say, like, kind of to summarize what you've been saying, if you're someone who maybe is handy and has some experience around there, or really wants to learn and get a hands-on experience, it might be something. I won't say fun. Might be something exciting to tackle and kind of go through that process yourself. And the end of it, be rewarded a little bit if you do things right and you work hard yourself. Then you can essentially just be paid for your efforts, at least, right? Like, you made back some money for the effort that you put in. Wasn't necessarily that you made back $100,000 randomly because you built your own house, but it's because of all that extra work you put in to save yourself that money.
Yeah, I think it's a great way to get ahead because it's essentially it's tax-free money. You don't need to pay yourself a wage, but when you go to sell a house, you're going to reap the benefits of doing that work, and there's no income tax on your used residential sale if it's your primary residence. So that's where we found a lot of value. And we were able to move the money we made in each of those houses into the next one and kind of increase our lifestyle and our house without increasing our mortgage at all. So that was kind of the benefit there. I do think that there needs to be some level of understanding of the construction process. I think if it's something you want to tackle on your own, I'd want to make sure that, I'd suggest that you make sure you have a knowledge of how a house is built, of the different trades that you need, and maybe have a bit of a mentor. My brother built, my uncle was a home builder, my dad was a ticketed carpenter, so I definitely had people around me who knew. I'd also worked for my brother. He was owner of Neighborhood Homes. I kind of built 3 homes from start to finish and worked on a few others in between. So I kind of had an idea of what I was getting into. I probably was still naive, but at least I had that idea. Totally. If you have no idea and want to build a home, I would suggest talking to a home builder. We know a lot of good home builders, custom builders. We know some smaller guys. So if you really want to put in some sweat equity, they might be able to work with you to allow you to do some of the things and kind of save yourself a bit of money, but have them do the majority of it, look after your new home warranty, make sure everything is straight and square and going to stand up for the long time. I was going to say, even just through this conversation, I think it probably has ruled out for some people, if you're someone that doesn't want to give up your life for a year outside of your job, or can't put your job on pause, or can't put things in your life on pause, it probably is smarter to just hire this all out to a builder, right? Hire it out to a builder, or the reality is we did a substantial renovation, and maybe that's a different podcast, so we talk about that. But maybe it's something you look at where you can put your own stamp on a place without doing all the work.
Gotcha.
Now, if you're like a substantial renovation, I want to add on twice as much square footage and 4 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms and triple the size of the kitchen, well, that might be better to start from square one. But but yeah, if you just want to have a place of your own, maybe a good place to start rather than building a house is maybe renovating, maybe doing a small addition, something like that. Kind of getting your feet wet and go from there.
Yeah, no doubt. Awesome. Cool. Well, I feel a little more enlightened here on the home building process. I remember just being a kid and one of my friends being like, yeah, my dad's building a house for us. And I just remember thinking that it must be easy because this guy was like an engineer or something and not in home building at all. So it's, I guess just once I got to this industry, just actually seeing the home building process, seeing builders at work, I understand why more people don't just build them themselves, and all of the efforts that go into it, even just on the paperwork side of things, is quite it can just be over a lot of people's heads, including mine till just now. So next episode, I'll have a new house started up at some point, as long as Jeff's dad will also finance my build. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you're quite there with my dad, but we can introduce you. Try that.
I think I met him at Kaylin's wedding. So, yeah. But maybe
He's a
not,
nice guy.
Maybe not quite on the lender side of things yet. My dad, when are you gonna lend me that? My dad's coming this weekend, so I'll pitch it. I'll pitch to him this weekend. I'll show him this podcast, and maybe I'll have backing by next podcast. But
yeah, no, and I think there's a lot of fun. There's a lot of challenges to building a house. This is just kind of scratching the surface. If anybody is interested in building a house, wants to talk about land and the process, we only address building in town, not private servicing in acreages, which becomes even more complex and complicated. We'd be happy to sit down and chat with you, though. It's probably a 3-4 hour conversation we could have to at least point you in the right direction. If you either want to do it yourself or if you want to get someone else involved, or if you ever want to just have a house built for you. If you want to be the designer, the picker of the plan, the picker of the lot, but you want to have someone else do the grunt work and you have the financial capability, we can certainly get you introduced to a number of great builders who are going to build phenomenal houses.
Totally. Yeah, awesome. Well, I think that's all for podcast number 4.
Yeah, we'll see how many times I said I caught myself a few times here. Trying to get out of that.
Yeah, I got the desk here so you can't see my feet shaking this time, but working on our podcast etiquette. Hopefully we're doing well, and we'll continue to improve on that.
Yeah, and we'd love to hear from anybody. If you have any questions, any thoughts, any way we could improve, we'd love to hear from you.
Totally. For Sam and Jeff, Team Workington, this is Real Estate Talk.
The end.